Hello, everybody. Welcome to class. Today, our last and final class of this iOS 101 course. Looking forward to being with you today. We are talking about table views today, which is going to be awesome because table views are essential in coding. We use them all the time, okay? I see in the chat that some of you have started the application process, and it looks like maybe some of you were not able to get in. I know how frustrating that can be to not get something that you want, for sure. And keep working, keep trying, and keep going for it. Programming is awesome. It's a really hard thing to do, and it requires a lot of time and a lot of effort. But if you don't get into the Lambda full-time course right now, it's okay. Just keep working on it. Keep practicing and try reapplying when you can, for the next course. So anyway, we'll go ahead and we'll push forward and talk about table views today. Hopefully everything went okay last night with the homework for data types. I know that it was probably a bit challenging, but hopefully it was really good learning experience to be able to work with those custom data types and everything, right? So let's get started. We've got a ton to cover today with these table views. So let's get into it, okay? So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. And we are going to be, instead of a playground today, we are going to get started with a new Xcode project. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Xcode here. And let's get started with a new Xcode project. And we're going to be starting with a single view application today. And this is going to be called Contacts. And it is a table view app, okay? Contacts table view app. We'll go ahead and hit next here. And yeah, I want to save it to my desktop here. So let's create this and let's get started. All right, so first things first, before we get into it, let's go ahead and open up your preferences and make it so that you guys can all see. Okay. All right, so table views is what we're talking about today. And table views you've probably seen in every single application that you've ever used, except for probably a game. They aren't as common in games, but they're pretty much common everywhere else, right? And so the app that I work on, let me just show you what the app that I work on during the day, it's called Day One. Let me go in and show you how much table views are used. And this is just one application, right? So let's give this a second to launch. Okay. So table views, let me go ahead and open this up. And let you all see my passcode. Okay, so here I've got a test journal, and you can see that everything that's in here, this is a table view, okay? So we've got these different cells, and you can tap on these cells, and you can go into kind of like a detailed view, right? And so today we're going to be doing something pretty similar. We're going to create a table view that has these individual cells, and then we can tap on the cell to get a more detailed view of that cell. Okay, so table views are used pretty commonly to organize lists of data. Okay, you can also see here we've got this drawer that has a table view of all of our different journal names. Table views are also pretty common in settings. You can see that this table view looks a little bit different. but it has different sections, right? And so these are all table views. And then inside of each one of these are more and more table views, right? So table views are all over the place in iOS, okay? And so today we're going to talk about the very basics of setting up a table view so that you can get a feel for it. And I feel like once you understand how table views work, the apps that you'll be able to create on your own, the possibilities are endless, right? Because most apps that you probably want to create are going to contain some sort of table view, okay? So let me show you the app that we're going to be creating today. I should still have it here. It's one of these contacts apps. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, cool. So you can see that I've got this application here that has a list of contacts, okay? And we will be able to tap on one of those contacts and it will take us to a new view controller that has the same contact, right? So we're going to be passing the contact object over from one view controller to another, okay? So let's go ahead and let's get into it. And whenever I start a project, I like to get started with, start with the main.storyboard, right? I like to be able to set up visually what I'm wanting to see, okay? So today, because we are here with this template, we can see that we have a view controller, okay? And the view controller doesn't have a table view built into it, right? And so here in our object library, there are table views here, okay? And you could drag that table view in and you could configure it. But a table view controller will already have a table view built into it. And table view controller is nice because it will already set up a lot of the things that we need for our table view, as well as take up the full screen, right? So you would use like a table view object if you wanted to set up a table view that didn't fill the entire screen. But a table view controller is a table view that takes up the entire screen, which is the application that we want to create today, okay? So we don't need this view controller anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to delete it, okay? So make sure that you have it selected and delete. And because the view controller, we've deleted the view controller, this view controller.swift file here isn't connected to anything. And so we don't need this either. We'll get started with a new file later. So let's go ahead and remove the view controller.swift file, okay? All right, so now here I've got a clean storyboard and we want to get started by setting up a table view controller, okay? So in your object library, search for table view, and you should see this option for table view controller here. Go ahead and drag that out, and here we have a table view controller, okay? So let's take a look at some of the properties that we can examine inside of this table view. Okay, so first off, if I look at the view hierarchy here, we see that I have a table view controller that contains a table view, okay? And so if we look over here on the right, I've got my different things that I can set. So I can set row heights, I can set header heights, all right here in our size inspector. And then in our attributes inspector, I can set up different prototypes. If I want to have more than one prototype cell in here, I can toggle that as well. For today, we only need one though. You can see that I can set up the style if I want to see my cells grouped, or if I just want them to see them set out, just a straight table view, I can set that up as well, right? So lots of different properties that we can adjust on our table view, okay? Well, let's open up our table view and see what's inside, okay? So we can see that our table view contains a table view cell, okay? So let's go ahead and select our table view cell here. And you see that we get even more things that we can modify to make our table view as custom as we want it to be, okay? So let's take a look here at style, okay? And so these are some of the common built-in table view styles that Apple gives to us, okay? So right now it's already set on custom, so I could drag like an image view into it, I could drag different labels, I could drag a text field into it, right? But because our app is pretty basic today, let's actually go and look at some of our other built-in table view cell types, right? So let's take a look at basic. Okay, you can see that basic table view just comes with a title here on the left, and that's it. Okay, so pretty basic. If we do right detail, you can see that we have a label on the left and a label on the right. Okay, left detail gives us the two labels, but they're both kind of left aligned. And then subtitle gives us two labels, but one is beneath the other. Okay, so for our application today, we really only need the basic, right? Because we just need one single label. So let's go ahead and make sure that our table view style, or our table view cell style, is set to basic. Okay, so we've got this basic style in here, and our title, which we're going to adjust because it's going to depend on the name, but we're going to say it could be John or it could be name. I could even give it a name right here, just so that when I'm looking at the storyboard, I know what kind of information is going to be contained in that label. Okay. So you can see other things here. We can adjust the color of our label. We can change the font of our label. So all of your customization of these views will be done here in the Attributes Inspector. You can adjust these properties in code as well, but Interface Builder is really nice because you can see it right in front of you and get a feel for what it's going to look like before you actually run it. Okay? All right. So I have my table view set up here. And that's about all that we're going to need for our table view, right? There's not a lot more customization that we're going to need to do on here. So let's go ahead and remember when we're setting up storyboards, and you'll remember that when we started with our view controller that was here on our storyboard, it had a big arrow to the left of it, okay? And the big arrow there to the left of the storyboard means that that's kind of the entry point into your storyboard. It means it's the initial view controller, okay? So when we deleted our view controller, it also deleted that arrow that was specifying the initial view controller, okay? So if I were to run the app would run, but it wouldn't know where to go, right? Because we haven't set up an initial view controller, okay? So whenever I delete that view controller that was already on here, I need to make sure that whatever storyboard I put on here that I want to be first, that I set it as the initial view controller, okay? And the way that you do that is select the view controller on the storyboard, and then over here in the Attributes Inspector, you're going to select this is initial view controller, okay? And you'll see that now the arrow has appeared here to the left. So now, if we run our app, the app knows its entry point. It knows that it needs to go to this specific storyboard. Okay? All right. So now that we have our storyboard set up, let's talk about how we can set up some code for it to actually do stuff. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a new file, because remember we deleted our view controller.swift file. So right now this storyboard doesn't have anything connected to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's go to File, New, and then File here. Okay, and a lot of times we've been creating Swift files, but today we want to create a Cocoa Touch class file. Okay. And as it says, these are class files. And so this will give us template files that we can use for specific classes. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to Next here, you'll see that we need to give this table view controller a class, okay? So I'm going to call, let's go ahead and call this contact view controller, because it's going to contain a list of our contacts. But instead of being a subclass of UI view controller, we want it to be a subclass of UI table view controller, right? Because we're creating a table view. So it's going to be a subclass of UI table view controller. And you can see that as soon as I changed that, it actually modified my class up here and changed contact view controller to contact table view controller, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to hit Next here. And we're just going to create it. And now we have our contact table view controller, okay? So now we have a view controller Swift file, and we've got our storyboard, but the two aren't connected yet, okay? So here's what we need to do to connect them. So go to your main.storyboard file and make sure that you're selected on the table view controller, okay? And then we are going to click on this little thing that looks like a newspaper icon. This is our identity inspector, okay? And you can see that right now this table view controller doesn't have a class, okay? It's just sort of assigned to the default UI table view controller class, but I want to make it part of my contact table view controller class, right? So that the storyboard and the project file, or the Swift file are connected, right? So if I start typing in here, contact table view controller, you can see that it auto completes for me, and I can push enter. And now this table view and the file that I just created are connected, okay? So now any code that I change in my file is going to be connected to this table view controller, okay? Is everyone with me thus far? Does everyone have their storyboard set up as well as their contact table view controller file? Okay, so Samira is missing the arrow, okay? So remember, the arrow is important, right? Because that's how we set the initial view controller. So make sure that you have your contact table view controller selected. And in this attributes inspector, make sure that you've checked this box right here that says is initial view controller, okay? And you'll see as soon as I check that the arrow should appear. Okay, very good. All right, so let's go ahead, and now that our table view is set up, almost set up completely, let's go ahead and take a look at this new file that we created, okay? If you look through it, you'll see that there's actually a lot of code built into it for us, which is pretty awesome, okay? So that's what's so cool about those Cocoa Touch class files, is that they are already pre-populated with the code that you will need for most classes, okay? For most of the common classes that you're gonna be creating, right? So let's go ahead and let's go through some of these things, okay? We don't need our did receive memory warning function, okay? And let's clear out all of this green code here. That's just stuff that could go in view did load. We're not gonna need anything in view did load initially, okay? But these are the ones, these table view data source ones are the ones that I wanna get into, okay? So the awesome thing about setting up a table view controller is that it has all of these data source methods connected to it, okay? Which makes setting up a table view really easy, okay? Because we can see here these different functions that we have that are directly connected to my table view. And here I can set the number of sections that my table view needs. I can set the number of rows. You can see here number of rows and sections, so I can set the number of rows for each section. And then these other ones are commented out, and I'll go through one or two of them here, okay? So let's go ahead and let's clean this up a bit, okay? So number of sections, first off, we're only gonna have one section and the default is 1. So go ahead and just get rid of that. We don't even need that, okay? It's not a required data source method, okay? Let's see here. Your file tree looks different from mine. Your contact table view controller is not inside the contacts table view app folder. It's not inside of here? Is it something like this? Oh no, I don't want to do that actually. Make sure that you drag it and put it inside of the contacts table view folder. Okay. All right. So, all right, back to our table view data source methods. Okay, so we don't need the number of sections. We're not too worried about that. But we do want to give it a number of rows, okay? So this data source method is coming to us and it's saying, hey, before I set up your table view, how many rows do you want it to have, okay? And so We can set up an integer value here. I could say return 5, or I could say return 4. But that is obviously going to depend on how many contacts we have inside of our application, right? So this isn't going to be very common, but I'm going to hard code an array of contacts into this table view controller. Okay, normally you'll have like a you'll have more of like a data file that contains all of your would contain all of your contacts and allow you to create contacts. But for today, we're just going to hard code our contacts in. So let's go ahead and let's set this. We're going to say variable contacts for my application. And let's put a few of you in my contacts, okay? So I've got Samira here. Rebecca. Okay. Get a few more of your names here. We've got Joel. We've got Rick. I'll include all of you in our contacts app. Okay. Joel, Rick, and put Sergey in. Okay. So these are all of the contacts that I want for my application. Okay, and Samira, you just said I don't see the code. Can you guys not see my screen anymore? Or you don't see the code in your file? Okay. Let's take a quick pause and let's make sure that Samira gets everything set up. That's okay. Don't worry about it. So did you make sure to do a Cocoa Touch class file? Okay. So remember to add our new file, right? We're going to do file new, and then we're going to do file new file, or you could do Command N. Okay. So make sure that you select the Cocoa Touch class file. Okay. And then you're going to give it a name, but make sure, and this is probably why you're not seeing the code, make sure that it is a subclass of UI table view controller. Okay. So go ahead and delete your file that doesn't contain the code, because it's not going to be connected the way that we want it. So go ahead and delete that and create a new Cocoa Touch class file and give it a class name of contact table view controller. And it's going to be a subclass of UI table view controller. Okay. All right, and Samira, just let us know when you're caught up. Okay, looks like you maybe got it figured out. Perfect. Okay, so what we were just doing is I was going to hard code a contacts array into this contact table view controller, right? And so we'll say that our contacts is our data source for all of our different contacts, right? Okay. So now let's go back to our table view data source methods. Okay, and remember these table view data source methods are what we call delegate methods, and these are delegate methods on a table view. And they just give us the common things that we need to include in order for our app to properly set up a table view, okay? So number one, it needs to know how many rows we need to give it, okay? So in this case, we want our table view to have as many rows as we have contacts, okay? So I'm going to go ahead here and call my contacts array, okay? So self.contacts, and then there's this nifty little function here. It's called count, okay? So I want the number of rows in my table view to be equal to my self.contacts.count, okay? So number of rows is always going to be how many people I have in my contacts, okay? This is a required data source method, okay? So I deleted number of sections because that is not a required data source method, because if I don't have it, if I don't implement it, it will just default to one section, right? Okay, so first off, we need to tell the table view how many rows it needs. Okay, in this case, it's going to be the count of my contacts. Okay, this next table view data source method, let me uncomment it here, is cell for row at. Okay, this is how I like to read it, cell for row at. Okay, this is also another required data source method. Okay, so the reason that this one is required is because cell for row at is a data source method that is asking us, okay, I know how many rows I need, but what should the rows look like? Or what data should they contain? Okay, so cell for row at is saying what needs to be included in the cell. Okay, so you'll see here that it already defaults and gives us a cell object. Okay, and you can see that our cell, it says DQ reusable cell with identifier. Okay, so pretty common in programming is that we can reuse our table view cells. Okay, so with a lot of applications that you've used, when you're scrolling through a table view, you probably think that as soon as you brought it up, it loaded this giant table view, and that as you're scrolling, you're just getting closer to the bottom. Okay, and that's how I always envisioned what table view, the way that table views worked, right? It was just this really long view, and you could only see what was inside of the screen, but as you scrolled, you were just kind of getting closer to the bottom. Okay, a better way to think of how table views are set up is think of a treadmill. Okay, so when you have a table view loaded on your screen, when you're scrolling it up, the cells aren't really like going up into outer space, right? The cells are actually going back around and being recycled. Okay, so it's more like a treadmill. And so what we do here to set up this DQ reusable cell is saying what type of cell do you want to recycle as a user is scrolling through, okay? And so it says that we need to put in a reuse identifier, okay? Well, we haven't set up a reuse identifier yet on our table view, so let's go ahead and do that now. So let's jump back to our main.storyboard here. And let's select our cell, okay, our table view cell here. And you can see that if I look over here in the attributes inspector, there's a place to put in an identifier, and then it says reuse identifier, okay? So this basic cell type that we already set up here, that's what I want to reuse in my table view. That's what I want it to cycle through, okay? So let's go ahead and give this an identifier, and let's just call it contact cell, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy that just to make sure that I have the exact spelling and everything. And let's jump back over to our contact table view controller, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and instead of reuse identifier here, we want it to be contact cell. I want my cell that we're using for cell for row at to be of my type contact cell, okay? And I already gave it that identifier. Okay, so now that we've got a cell here, let's go ahead, and is everyone with me up to this point? I don't want to move forward if you guys are still behind, or if you have any specific questions. You guys have been pretty quiet today. Okay. So Rebecca, you missed what I chose. Are you talking about over here in the main.storyboard? Oh yeah, okay. So we're going to be selecting our contact cell here in our view hierarchy, right? And then over here in the attributes, make sure you have the attributes inspector selected, which is this little like down arrow, okay? And this identifier, right? Set this identifier up here. Okay, so I just gave it an identifier of contact cell. You can make it whatever you want it to be, but no, don't rename the content view. We're only in the contact cell. Okay, don't go down to the contact view level. Just contact cell. And we're giving it an identifier of contact cell. Okay? All right. So now that we've got that, let's head back over to our table view controller. Okay, so we have a cell, And we want each of our cells to contain a contact object, right? And so what I need to do is I need to create a contact object from my contacts array, okay? So let's go ahead and let's say let contact equal, okay? And I want to create a specific contact, okay? And you can see here that we get this nifty little parameter that gives us an index path. Okay, so remember we talked about index paths when we talked about collections, and that we can select or we can remove specific items from an array using an index path, okay? So in this case, this is giving us a specific index path, and so I can say, okay, I want this contact to be at index path 0, this contact at index path 1, this contact at index path 2, okay? So that's another really nice thing about this table view data source method, is that it can go through and it can assign in order your different items inside your data source, or in this case, contacts, and assign it to each row, okay? So I need to create a contact object first, and in order to get that, we need to select table view, and we're gonna do table view, because we want our contact to be equal to whatever is at our given index path, okay? Do we have any guesses for how we might set that up, or how we can grab that contact out? Whoops. No guesses at all, guys? Okay. Well, let's go ahead then and do it together, okay? So I want my contact to be equal to my table view cell for row at, and then I want to pass in my index path dot row, okay? Index path. Okay. And I need to, let me double check my notes. Just make sure that we are setting this up right. Give me just one sec, guys. Sorry, I'm totally doing this wrong. Okay, sorry. So our contact, if we want to select a contact, remember we use subscript notation. And I don't know what's wrong with my brain. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Okay, so our contact is going to be equal to our contacts data source, right? And then we're going to use subscript notation and pass in our index path dot row here, okay? So that is going to be our contact. So essentially what we're saying is we're saying let our contact be equal to, and then take the index path dot row and go through and loop through each one of these contacts, right? Okay, so contacts index path row. So this is going to give me an integer value, okay? And so our contact for our first row, okay, well, it's going to say, okay, go to the contacts array and select the first item, Samira, okay? And then it's going to loop back through in this table view data source method, right? And then it's going to say, okay, at second index path, I want the second item from my contacts array. So we're going to select Rebecca. Okay, and then for the third item, okay, the index path is going to be 3 here. So we're going to go to our contacts array and select the third item, which is Joel. Okay, so that is how we set up our contact object by using the subscript notation for arrays, right? We're going to select our contacts and then whatever our index path.row is. Okay, so now that we have a contact, I can say cell dot title label or text label, sorry. I can say I want my cell dot text label to be equal to my contact. Okay, so now that we have a contact object, oh my goodness, cell dot text label dot text. Sorry guys, I don't know why I'm struggling so much. Okay, cell.textlabel.text should be equal to whatever my contact is in this case, okay? Is everybody with me thus far? Or do we have any specific questions? Okay, I'm gonna assume you are all with me. Okay, all right, so again, I apologize for my confusion with the table view cell for row at. I don't know what I was trying to do there. Our contact is going to be equal to our contacts array using subscript notation of using the passed-in index path, okay? So index path.row here, okay? So the reason that we do .row is because row is an integer, right? Index path is actually of type index path. So the index path.row is the integer value of that index path. And that's what we need to pass in here into our contacts array, right? Because it's expecting us to give it an integer value to know which item to select inside of our contacts array, okay? So now we've got our cell.textlabel.text should be equal to the contact that we picked out, okay? And then we want to return the cell. So let's go ahead and run our code and see where we're at. I don't want to run it on my iPhone though. Let's just run it on the simulator. To my iPhone 10, and we'll hit play here. And let's see if we're moving in the right direction. Okay, so from what we've done, I would expect that we have just a simple table view that has a list of all of these names on it, okay? And there we go, okay? So you should have a table view, and it contains my list of names: Samira, Rebecca, Joel, Rick, Sergey. Okay, so I've got this table view here, so we're moving in the right direction. Is everybody up to this point? Is everybody seeing a table view? Okay, so Rebecca says that hers. Okay, all right, we'll just move forward, and then I'm happy to help after the lecture today. Okay, so we're moving in the right direction. We've got a table view, and it has the names of all of our different contacts on it. Okay, but you can see that I can't select anything, which, you know, if I can't select anything, then we're not quite done yet, right? So let's talk about how we can do that. So let's go ahead and go back here and go into our main.storyboard, okay? So remember that we wanted to set up a detail view controller where we're going to be passing the name from our table view into our view controller, okay? So let's go ahead and let's drag another view controller out here. Okay, and now that we've got this view controller, let's just bring in a UI label, right? Because we want a label that will be able to hold our name. So go to label here, and then let's add a couple of constraints. I'm just going to pin it to, yeah, let's just do 24 24 on the top, and 24 on the trailing edge, okay? So remember to add constraints, you click on the little Star Wars TIE Fighter thing, little pinwheel thing, and then we're gonna add constraints to the leading, top, and trailing edges, okay? And I'm gonna say this label is going to be 24 points from the left edge, 24 points from the top edge, and 24 points from the right edge, okay? So I'll go ahead and add these 3 constraints, and you can see that now our label is pinned, okay? And in this case, this is also going to be holding a name, right? Okay, so now let's talk about how we can connect these, right? Because right now they aren't connected in any way, okay? Well, first off, I'm going to add something called a navigation controller, okay? So a navigation controller is something that we can put at the forefront of our application to kind of manage the navigation through our app, okay? In this case, we're gonna wanna navigate from one controller to the next, and we also want to be able to navigate back, right? And so the navigation controller is going to be able to manage all of that. And so when you're using different applications, you'll see that there's often like a bar along the top, and in that bar it contains like a back button or a forward button or a done button or an OK button, and that's all being managed by the navigation controller, okay? So let's add a navigation controller to our table view so that I can navigate between my contact table view controller and my contact detail table view controller, okay? So make sure that you have your contact table view controller selected, and we're gonna go up here to Editor, okay? Editor in this top menu. Then we're gonna go to Embed In, and then we're gonna embed inside of a navigation controller, okay? So you'll see that now we have embedded our table view into a navigation controller, and you can see that it actually added this little bar here on the top, okay? And it creates that bar for us so that the navigation controller can add like the back button and whatnot for us, okay? So let's go ahead and let's select our contact table view controller. And if I actually click on the navigation bar here, I can give that a title, okay? So let's call it contacts. And you can see that now it's labeling this, this view controller as my contacts, right? And if you want to be cool, you can go to the navigation bar inside of the navigation controller here, and you can set that to, if I wanted to like have it show like large, there should be a prefers large titles box here. So if I select that, you'll see that now contacts is humongous, okay? So now we have that set up. Now we have a navigation controller. You can see that the navigation controller is connected to my contacts app, or my contacts table view controller, okay? But I still don't have any connection in between these two, okay? So what I need to do is I need to create something that is called a segue, okay? And a segue is something that we can create here in Storyboard to segue from one view controller to another, okay? So to create a segue, I'm going to make sure that I am selected on my contact cell, because when the user taps on the cell, I want it to segue to my detail view controller, right? So to create this segue, I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to drag from my cell over to my new view controller, okay? As soon as I do that, you'll see that we have options to put in the segue. Okay, so I've got this show segue, I've got this present modally, okay? And these are just different ways that we can present. So like a modal usually comes up from the bottom. But for our class today, let's just go ahead and do a show segue, okay? And the show segue, what it does is it slides the new view controller in from the right, okay? And so you can see as soon as I added that segue, it added that view controller to my navigation controller, okay? So now you can see we've got a back button to contacts, okay? So now I'll be able to navigate and go into my detail view controller and navigate back to my contacts table view controller, okay? All right, so we've set this up in Storyboard, this detail view controller, but we need to set up a project file, right? Because right now there isn't any code connected to it, okay? So let's go ahead and we're going to go to File, New, File here. We're going to be doing a Cocoa Touch class file again. But instead of it being a subclass of Table View Controller, we just want it to be a subclass of UI View Controller. Okay, and let's go ahead and call this Contact Detail View Controller. I'm going to hit Next here, and let's go ahead and create it. And now I have a file for my Contact Detail View Controller, but I need to make sure that the two are connected. So I'm going to select my View Controller back here in Storyboard. We're going to select its Identity Inspector again, and I'm going to set the class on it to Contact Detail View Controller. Okay, so now my storyboard or my view controller here on the storyboard is connected to my Contact Detail View Controller. Okay. Is everybody with me? I know we're going through this fast and it's a lot of brand new stuff. Okay. I'll assume that we are all good. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and let's open up my assistant editor, okay? Because I need to make an outlet, right? And this outlet here, well, let's clean up this code really quick. I don't need any of this navigation stuff. So go ahead and clear out that commented out code. I also don't need the memory warning thing, so let's get rid of that. Okay, and so let's create an outlet to this text label, okay? I'm gonna drag it over here, and let's call this name text label. Or we could do contact text label. That'd probably be better. Contact text label. Okay, so go ahead and we're gonna connect that outlet. So now I have a reference to my contact text label. Okay, well let's see how we're doing with our code thus far. Let's run it and see what's going on. Okay, so I've got my table view cells here. Let's see if I select on one of them. Okay, it looks like the navigation is working, right? So that navigation controller is passing, that navigation controller with the segue is passing me to this new view controller, and the navigation controller gives me a way to go back, right? So I can select on contacts and go back, okay? But we have a problem here. This still just says name, right? Rebecca still says name, okay? So now I need to set it up so that we pass our contact from one view controller to the other, okay? Well, first off, I'm going to need a contact object on my contact detail view controller, right? So let's go ahead and let's create it. And let's say I've got let contact be of type string optional, okay? So now I have a contact property on top of my contact detail view controller, okay? So now inside of viewed load, we always want my contact text label.text to be whatever my contact is, right? So that when I select on Rebecca as my contact, that it's going to say Rebecca, okay? So let's go ahead and set that in viewed load, and let's say self.contactTextLabel.text is equal to my contact here, okay? And I'm getting an error. Does this need to be a variable? Yeah, okay, we'll set this as a variable. Okay, so variable contact is going to be of type string optional. Okay, so then in our viewed load, we're going to say self.contactTextLabel.text is going to be equal to whatever my contact is. Okay, but we're not quite done yet, right? Because we haven't set contact to anything. Okay, well, if you think about it for a second, I'm wanting to pass my contact from my table view controller to my detail view controller. So how can I do that? Well, let's go ahead and let's go back to my table view controller and see if we have anything that will allow us to pass things back and forth, okay? So if we go down here, you'll see that we have this, this mark here for navigation, okay? And this is the function that we're gonna need to implement in order to navigate from one view controller to the other. If I want to pass anything from one to the other, I can use this function that's called prepare for segue, okay? So remember, we created a segue on our table view controller. And so whenever we're segueing from one view controller to another, it's going to call this prepare for segue method, okay? Which means before I segue, is there anything that you want to pass, okay? So let's go ahead and let's implement this method so that we can pass our contact back and forth, okay? So what we're gonna do here is we first off need to make sure that we have the correct segue, okay? And we need to give our segue an identifier, right? In order to make sure that we have the right segue in here. Because the parameter is giving us a segue. But we don't want it to do the same thing for every segue that we may have in our app. We want to make sure that it only does this very thing of passing the contact from one to the other if it's a given segue. Okay, so we need to go back to our main.storyboard here, click on our segue that we created, and in the attributes inspector, we can give it an identifier, and I'll say to detail view controller, okay? So that is the identifier for my segue, okay? So, now that we've got that, let's go ahead and was everybody able to add that identifier to the segue? So that's pretty important. You guys are so quiet today. Okay, well, let's move forward then. Okay, so now that we have an identifier for our segue, let's head on back over to our table view controller, okay? And implement this prepare for segue method, okay? So I need to make sure that the segue that we're calling is the correct segue before I do anything, okay? So let's run a check on here with a conditional. And let's say if our segue dot identifier is equal to, okay, and then we're going to put our segue identifier in there, then what, okay? So this will make sure that our code is only run if it's the right segue, okay, which our segue identifier is to detail view controller, okay? So here, I need to create an instance of my detail view controller, right? Because I want to pass something from my table view here to my detail view controller. And the only way that I can pass one to the other is if I had an instance of said view controller, okay? So in here, I'm gonna say, okay, guard let, and then we're just gonna give this a property name of detail VC, okay? And our detail VC is going to be whatever the destination is of my segue. Because remember, I grabbed the segue and I pulled it over to my detail view controller. So I'm going to say that my detail view controller is my segue's destination, okay? And then I'm going to make sure that this is as contact detail view controller, okay? Okay, so yeah, the identifier is what, or the segue is what is triggered by our click, right? It's triggered by tapping on one of the table view cells. It hits that segue. And so then in here, we're saying, okay, so if it is indeed the segue that we created, which is to detail view controller, first off, let's make sure that the destination is our detail view controller, which it is, right? And because we know that, I'm going to cast it as our contact detail view controller, okay? But we're also going to need an index path, okay? because we want to make sure that we're passing the right name back and forth. So I'm going to say guardlet detail view controller equals segue.destination as contact detail view controller, and let index path equal my table view, and then there's this nifty little function, index path for selected row. Okay, so I want my index path to be whatever the user tapped. Okay, so table view.index path for selected row. Okay, and then to finish off our guard statement, we're going to say else return. Okay, so if it doesn't meet these two requirements, okay, then return. Okay, but if it does, then we can continue moving forward. And now that I have an instance of my detail view controller, my contact detail view controller, that will allow me to access specific properties on that, right? And we created a contact property on my contact detail table view controller, right? I've got my contact here. So now here in my prepare for segue, I can say, okay, detail view controller dot contact is equal to my contacts array that we have here in this file, right? And then using subscript notation, index path dot row. Okay, so I have an index path here, right? And the index path is whatever the user selected. Okay, so now this is going to assign my contact equal to the index path of whatever we selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's run it and see what we get. All right, moment of truth. Samira, Samira, Rebecca, Rebecca, Joel, Joel, Rick, Rick, Sergey, Sergey. Okay, so the prepare for segue is a place where we can prepare for that segue, right? And prepare to pass information from our table view controller over to our detail view controller. Okay, so I know that we're just about out of time. Do we have any questions? I know that all of this is brand new. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that is everything that we have for today. Okay. And that is everything for the class. So for those of you who are still considering the full-time course, make sure that you apply online. This is everything that we would expect you to know to complete the challenges, the code challenge that you'll have as you apply. So now you're ready. Feel free to watch or review the YouTube video of this course. All of the videos except for today's lecture have been posted. So you can go review things there if you have any questions before you take the final, I guess, code challenge. But yeah, that's everything with table views. Okay, you guys have been awesome. I've enjoyed being able to work with each one of you and help you learn to program, because I really love programming, and I love to be able to teach it and to show others how fun it is to do. Okay, I know that this project might have been a bit overwhelming, but keep practicing. This is kind of the basic way to set up table views, and so you know, you'll have the homework tonight, but also take some opportunities to set up some of your own table view apps using and implementing the things that we learned today. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to post the homework here. So we're doing Swift vocabulary project. Okay, and I will post that in the chat here, as well as update it in the good old Slack. August 6th. And yeah, I'll just change the topic to the channel with your new homework like I've been doing in the past. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. So your homework has been posted. You also have a stand-up form. I think the stand-up form is a little bit different tonight. It's like a end of course stand-up form. And I don't actually have the link for that. So if Perez, if you can post the link for that final stand-up form that they'll need, that would be awesome because I don't have it. But yeah, so make sure that you fill that out. That's really good to give me some feedback, give Lambda some feedback about the course, and also to give me some feedback because I always want to become a better teacher. I still am not perfect and have a lot of things to work on. So I always appreciate that feedback so that I can know how to change my course, change the class in the future. Okay. If any of you are interested in retaking this course, we'll be starting the course again on August 27th. Okay. On August 27th, this course will start again. So if some of you missed it and you really want to take it again, like if you missed some of the classes and you want to take it again, you can take it again at that time, or you can just watch the lectures online. That's not a problem either. Okay. Alrighty, anyway, I've ranted enough. Best of luck on your homework, and thank you so much for your patience with me as we've been going through these classes, and best of luck with your programming future. I know that you guys can do it, and you should do it because it's amazing. Okay? Alrighty, we'll see you guys.